Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree. I am a transgender woman, and today I'm talking about wood grain electronics. These were popular in the 70s and early 80s. They were switched in the late 80s. Electronics switched to a mostly chrome and silver aesthetic. The 90s, most things were mostly black, glossy black or matte black, depending on the company and the product. And then today we have some stuff that comes in chrome or silver or gray, but most electronics today are black still. So we've pretty much once the 90s came along, we settled on black equals electronics, and we've pretty much stayed there for 30 years. We haven't made much changes. I don't have an explanation for why that is, but I do kind of have an at least why I think wood grain electronics were popular during the day and why I miss them. So your home electronics, I mean, I'm saying as a concept, as like having electronics in your house standard, a stereo, a TV, a VCR, a computer, video game consoles, etc. This started in the 70s and blew up in the 80s and 90s. I can't talk too much about the 60s and earlier, but I can say that for most people, just from what I learned in college and research and just what you see in television and just talking to old people, most people had a television in the living room, and it was probably a console TV, a wood grain TV. They had a record player, which was also a console record player, a big record player that had it was a big, basically it was a like a table that had a record player and a stereo built in, and that was mostly it. Most people didn't have much beyond that because there wasn't anything. Some people may have had like a ham radio. And yes, most people had a telephone or two in their house. Most households had one telephone uh, prior to the 70s and 80s when we got multi lines and call waiting and things like that, which would get standard in the 90s and then just be taken for granted today because, now it's just like we have voicemails, call waiting, everything. Um, but and then starting in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, you would also get a microwave, which I would consider an electronic device, but it was more of a kitchen appliance. And then you would probably get like a VCR or some type of home video player, maybe a laser disc or something, and eventually video games. Now, some of the early video game consoles, the Pongs, the Odyssey, the Atari VCS, did have wood grain, wood paneling. Not wood paneling, but it was plastic that looked like wood grain. Most of the TVs at that time were either wood grain consoles or great big boxes of wood, actual wood, or if you had a tabletop or a portable, not I wouldn't say portable TV, but a small like a tabletop TV or a countertop TV, those were mostly gray or silver, mostly gray, mostly like dark gray. Those are the ones you see in old movies, you know, like Nightmare on Elm Street, Gremlins, etc. You see them in the bedroom. It's just like a little tiny gray box. I had one of those in my bedroom as a kid in the 80s. One of the reasons why I think wood grain was popular, at least in the 70s, less so in the 80s, um, is because it had that homemade look to it, because we were still shifting from a do it yourself furniture kind of do it yourself electronics. Like the early computers were just kits you assembled yourself, things like that. Ham radios would have been things or stereo components. You just bought individual components. You bought the receiver, the tuner, the equalizer, the tape deck, etc., all individual components, and assembled it yourself. So there was that do it yourself feel to electronics back then. And I think a lot of people still had that. Oh, yeah, our home decor was wood grain, wood panel. You can see wood paneling behind me, wood panel on the walls. You know, our furniture was made out of wood and we wanted it to look like wood. We still wanted brown bookshelves, that looked like had wood grain on them, and wood grain cabinets and tabletops, kitchen counters, etc. So you wanted your electronics to fit into that home decor design aesthetic. You didn't want them to stand out like a sore thumb. You know, if you had a, bright orange VCR sitting on top of your wood grain console or tabletop or whatever, TV stand or whatever, and wood paneling all around, it would look out of place. Now, in the 80s, we started to see a lot of silver and gray. Even the NES was gray, and a lot of the game consoles at the time were silver or gray. Some of them were plastic, black. Well, they were all plastic, but I mean black. Some of them had colors on them, like the Sega Master System was black with red on it. But for the most part, it was either gray or black. Following the video game patterns, Nintendo were the first ones to have multicolored consoles in the 90s. They started with the Game Boy. They did the Play It Loud series where you would just pick whichever color Game Boy you wanted. They continued that with the Nintendo 64. They had the different colored Nintendo 64s. They did in a limited uh, manner try it on the GameCube. They didn't do as many colors on the GameCube as they did in 64. And they really only did the red Wii and then the white and black Wii. So you didn't have like a variety of colors. The Wii U came in two colors, black or white. And it was just like if you had the basic model or the deluxe model, the basic was white, the deluxe was black. The Switch is the Switch. It's black. They're all black. They all look the same. There's no colors. PlayStations have pretty much been black since the PS2, and Xbox consoles, except for the 360, which had a few different colors, and the base model was white, have pretty much all been black as well. So wood grain, in as far as electronics, is decidedly a thing of the past. I will not say I miss the aesthetic, although in this trailer house I live in, everything looks wood panel. It would look better in this house than some of my slick black electronics do, but at the same time, it is what it is. I'm comfortable with the black. I've gotten used to it, and I think most people have. I think most electronics, DVD players, video game consoles, computers, etc., are pretty much black. So that's where we are. So do I miss wood grain? Not really, but I at least appreciate it, what they were doing for the time. Stay cool.